Hello and welcome once again to White Lotus of Light educational series. And so this is just going to be a short video today on what I kind of feel is like the three-pronged trident of stepping into your power. And those 3 points are overcoming trauma, which to me is really the key to everything. Overcoming and healing from victim consciousness, which is related, but is a bit different and a bit more insidious. And then the measure of one's ability to earn money is, and this will be upsetting to some people, but I'm absolutely certain of that, this is your self-worth in a very specific form. It's a very specific form of self-worth. And so I'm going to talk about all three of those factors today. But I did just want to say that for anyone who's interested, I have a very special angelic magic class coming up this May 16th. It's going to be done in a different way than I've ever done it in the past. And that new method allows for a lot more people to join. And so while there's still lots of spots available, it is going to be closed down probably on the 15th of May. And then I won't be doing an angelic magic class again until probably August. And so if you want to get in on the summer class, then that'll be sometime in July. It'll open up and then it will be happening during July and August. But if you want to get on the spring class, now's really the time. And in that, you'll learn how to work with the angels in order to do that invocation, in order to change self-limiting beliefs and circumstances in your life to really allow abundance and love and attracting friendships and letting your talents flow through and all the different ways that we can self-improve ourselves and sort of take advantage of that magical Second Amendment, if you will, which is to rearm ourselves with our God-given right to be co-creators of this reality to help bring about a more harmonious, beautiful, and peaceful and compassionate world as we take steps towards the golden age of Sat Yuga, which is a few yugas since, but we need to be planting those seeds now for the future generations especially. And so if you're interested in that, I will be providing a link below, or you can go to whitelotusoflight.com, go to consultations page, scroll to the bottom, and you'll find registration for that class. So the first thing we're going to talk about today is how overcoming trauma is really the key to everything. And the kind of trauma I'm talking about today is really the more severe kind. However, I think it's worth noting that everyone on this planet to some degree or another is traumatized. And that's one of the ways that we can have compassion for even these people who do these really ghastly things, is to just realize that everyone on this planet is traumatized to some degree. And in fact, the super wealthy elite are among the most traumatized people on the planet, believe it or not. They're very often traumatized almost directly from birth, in some cases from birth, and they're conditioned and prepared to be members of the elite. Sometimes they're even possessed, become possessed through rituals, or there's sort of walk-ins of prior dark magicians within that bloodline that want to reincarnate. There's all kind of horrible things that happen to the people who end up becoming the so-called elite, both the Luciferians and the Malachians, but the Malachian elite are in particular profoundly damaged. And so Robert Anton Wilson, who's one of my favorite intellectuals and authors of the 20th century, he wrote the following. He said, under the present brutal and primitive conditions on this planet, every person you meet should be regarded as one of the walking wounded. We have never seen a man or woman not slightly deranged by either anxiety or grief. We have never seen a totally sane human being. I think that that's a really powerful statement. I don't agree that we've never seen it. I would say people like Kuan Yin, like Jesus Yeshua, you know, there have been Ramana Maharshi, there have been various sages and saints and enlightened people who have broken free of that. But as a general rule, what Robert Anton Wilson said there is really, really true. And for many of us, there's much more severe trauma. And on that note, you know, a lot of people maybe who aren't new to the channel, or even people who watch the channel but aren't familiar with my full story, may not be aware that I had a really, really, really traumatizing childhood. I my father was physically and emotionally abusive, and we did a lot of healing and work through that before he died of cancer in 2010. Although it was still incomplete, and I had to do a lot of healing around it even after he's dead. One of the things I discovered is, oh, when I was a kid, there was nothing I wanted more than words of affirmation from my father. Just an attaboy would have been huge. Just like, you did really good today, and like, wow, you really crushed it out there on soccer. I had to like do a flawless 10 out of 10 in anything I did to get any praise out of the old man. Like, it was like pulling teeth. And one of the things that shocked me is after, when he was on his, getting close to his deathbed, and when he was dying, he started to say to me all the things I'd always wanted him to say. And it was like pouring water on the Sahara Desert. It just didn't matter. Because the unfortunate reality is that parents are perfectly capable of causing varying degrees of damage to their children, but it's fairly rare that the parent can actually reverse that damage, especially if there's no buy-in on the part of the child. But even in a collaborative effort, yes, there can be healing, and my father showed that to me. But there was a certain amount of healing that required just me to heal that, which when I get to the part about victim consciousness, that's going to come back up again about the unfortunate fact of where ownership needs to be taken. And so that was very significant trauma that I suffered at his hands. However, through extended family, I suffered far, far worse trauma. I was sexually abused repeatedly over the course of years. It wasn't constant. It was like parents would go out of town for the weekend thing. There would be some kind of like weird scenario where my extended family could get access to me, and I was pulled into a pedophile ring. And I was harmed, other children was harmed, the children were forced to harm one another. It was very, very, very severe. And I say this simply because while I'm still in the process of healing, much like a recovering alcoholic that can never touch drink again. I have to continuously work on this healing process. It is a process, and I still have flaws. I still make mistakes. I still harm my loved ones, who are close to me. I have very significant flaws that impact my day-to-day life, especially with those who are closest to me that get to know me on more than just the guy on White Lotus of Light, but as an intimate familiar. And so healing of your trauma is it's incredibly important. And as someone who had complex PTSD, that my PTSD counselor said was the worst he had ever seen, other than someone who had been tortured in like a black site torture pit. Healing from that kind of trauma is incredibly important. Healing from trauma in general is incredibly important. And the reason is that it just hijacks an insane amount of energy, and the coping mechanisms and strategies that come from it, for example, hypervigilance, which is something I still am trying to learn to let my guard down once in a while, just because it's exhausting. Boxers who hold their guard up for forever, like eventually they get exhausted and their guard droops and then they get hit, right? Like just the being hypervigilant, it's very taxing, it's very draining. Being that sensitive and that reactionary like I was is very debilitating, both to yourself and everyone around you. And so I've talked a lot in this channel about methods to heal that trauma. And I would say, I may do a deeper dive on how to heal trauma in the future. I do sessions with people. The main thing I would say is that you need to get in touch with those feelings and feel and process them without the story is the key. I used to take a bath. I'm just going to super simplify and distill it because I want to get to some of the other material here. I'd run a bath because baths made me feel really safe. I would tap into the memory enough to get the emotion flowing. And then I would love myself through the experience of feeling that suppressed trauma, those feelings of grief mostly. Sometimes rage would come up first because anger is the guardian of sadness. And then the sadness would come up, and through my own loving divine presence, of which everyone has that loving divine presence, I was able to transmute that energy. The key is to not let a story come in about, oh, I'm such a bad person, or oh, they're such a bad person, or why did that have to happen to me, or oh, that ruined my life, right? No kind of mental noise, just that raw feeling, that sobbing and that grieving of what happened. And then you can transmute it. If you start having the mind come in, it'll take that energy back and recycle it back into you. And so I'm not going to go any deeper on that. There's methods to heal trauma. There's also like EMDR, that like where your eyes go back and forth. There's neurofeedback machines. That was helpful for me. There's a variety of ways of healing trauma, but no investment you will make in life could be better than investing in healing your trauma. So for many of us who have been traumatized, there's a feeling that's either overt or some kind of unconscious of victim consciousness. And that is that you perceive that the universe is doing all these horrible things to you. And there's a simple reframe that has become a cliche and is sometimes used as a bludgeon to tell people, hey, I don't want to hear that right now. Like, that's too heavy for me, bro. And that is that things aren't happening to you, they're happening for you. Well, you might say, Ian, I had some horrible stuff happen. Well, repeatedly raped in a pedophile ring doesn't get a whole lot more horrible than that. People have certainly had harder lives than me, no doubt about it. It's not a competition. My point is that the level of trauma I experienced is comparable, almost certainly, to what you've experienced, and very likely worse than what you experienced. That's not a brag, it's just a reality. And I say this because much like a Vietnam vet would not want to listen to anyone talking about their PTSD unless it was another vet. People who have had the kind of like abuse and trauma and suffering I've had are very leery to listen to anyone else because the other people don't know. Brother, sister, I assure you, I know. I know how crippling and debilitating it is. I know how frightening it is. I know what it's like to wake up in the middle of the night and be terrified. Someone says some kind of phrase that an abuser said, you see something in a movie or TV and you just lock up. You feel whatever triggers the trauma and you start to dissociate or you start to be filled with defensive rage. It's so debilitating and so exhausting. And a big function of that is that you start to feel like, wow, this was horrible what happened to me. It's totally unfair and it's true, right? You were victimized. But what you have to do is you have to move out of that victim consciousness and into survivor consciousness, and then eventually into doer and creator and healer consciousness, right? The first step is to move out of victimhood and into survivorship. And one of the ways you do that is you recognize that everything that happens, it is happening for a higher cause. I couldn't be in the position I'm in now and helping the people that I help if I didn't have this experience, just like that Vietnam vet thing. If you don't know, you weren't numb, man, you don't know, right? That same kind of thing. Like, there's people who have that, men who've been sexually abused and raped, who have that energy of like, they don't want to listen to someone who hasn't experienced it, who hasn't been through it, right? Because deep down what they really want is acceptance. And you can't be fully accepted by someone else if they don't really understand what you've been through. And so just that acceptance is a big part of it. And so I'm in a position now where I'm able to heal other people because of what I went through. It also activated me psychically. It also, because it didn't break me and turn me into a perpetrator, it's given me a lot of healing tools and a lot of gifts and a lot of empathy that I wouldn't otherwise had. And I see now how it was sort of like oil that wasn't refined. And now through the refining process, I'm turning it into not just gasoline, but rocket fuel for me to go upwards, both materially and spiritually, as we end this call you again, move into the next era. And what I'm inviting you is to join me and to do what I did. You can. But what you have to do is you have to take radical responsibility for your life. Every aspect of your life, rather than seeing it as something that's happening to you, understand that on some level, your higher self, believe it or not, right? Like, why would Ian's higher self say be stuck in a pedophile ring when he was a kid? Like, that guy should be fired, worst writer ever, right? No, I see now, because I have enough distance and healing, I see now why it was so necessary for me to go through that horrific nightmare experience in order to be the man that I am today. And to know that I can survive fucking anything because I survived that shit. And you did too. If you're watching this, you survived that shit. You survived it. That's more than half the battle right there, is that surviving it. And the more you acknowledge, fucking A, I'm pretty badass, I survived that, you start to step into survivorship. into survivor consciousness. You can then move beyond that into creator, healer, whatever kind of consciousness, but that first step is into survivorship. And so taking radical responsibility for your life, recognizing every aspect of your life, your job, your income, your living situation, whether you have a partner or not, or have come to peace with that, right? That you don't have a partner, right? All of that is up to you. And if you cannot change these things, what you can do is accept these things. And if you find them unacceptable, or you're like, no, that's not acceptable, that's probably true. It probably is unacceptable, but then that means you can do something about it. And you might say, oh no, the economy is rigged against us. Oh, like women only like it if you're 6 foot and have a 6-pack and 6-figure income, or whatever conditioning excuses you have that just let you slip back into that victim consciousness. What you have to do is instead take total ownership over everything. And once you do that, then you have power. Then you have the power to break the negative patterns, to heal them, and to create new virtuous cycle patterns. But first, you have to take radical responsibility for your life. And you can do it with very simple first steps. Jordan Peterson, you know, he is who he is, but he has some really good advice. He tells these young men who don't have fathers, clean your room. Take responsibility for your immediate surroundings and clean your room. Do something simple to take accountability for some aspect of your life. And it can be really simple, and you should start simple unless you think you can go big. Cleaning your room, right? Do it, you know, I didn't file my taxes in time. I better get that extension in, or whatever, you know, like taking care of business, taking care of the tedium of adulthood, all the different things that you need to do. Just start taking responsibility and accountability for those things, and it starts to snowball and become this positive thing that gains its own momentum and takes on a life of its own. So a very important subset of victim consciousness is economic victim consciousness. This was something else that I was very, very entranced by, very trapped by, that has changed recently. And some people become very hostile with me when I talk about my recent successes in life, right? They don't like it. They feel that I'm just bragging, whatever. Well, part of it is I'm very excited that things are shifting for me in that regard. And I'm still not there. I'm not like rolling in the dough. I still have a lot of debt I need to clear. I actually have new family-related expenses that are enormous. So I'm just going to have to really step it up. But what I do know is that self-worth around money, which is a very specific form of self-worth, is everything. And it's a bit difficult to dial in to what part of that, because you'll see someone who's like a hyper competent man who's just a real badass, and he's like endlessly works hard, and then he's just not bringing in the money. And if you talk to that guy enough and you start talking to him about money, all of a sudden this different part of his persona comes out, because maybe he's rich. He hits the gym all the time and he slays endless pussy. He's just like getting the ladies left, right, and center, right? He's super buff. He, you know, he's a martial artist. He can kick any dude's ass, right? And he's hyper confident. But then you talk to him about money and he kind of shrivels up a little bit. He's like, oh, well, you can't, I just don't really have the skill set. I don't. No. Find what you're good at, whatever it is, and start developing it. You may or may not be able to take a big risk. If you don't have a safety net, I was fortunate enough that I had a safety net that I could take a big risk, and I quit my old job as a social worker because I had all that programming. Oh, I'm not good enough. Oh, I don't have the skills. I don't have anything to offer the world that I can monetize. And then I created this, and now I'm doing quite well, right? And I'm really building this momentum. But even doing this, in order, every time that I've started to make more money, I'll have massive amounts of self-worth and self-doubt come up. And I have to see it. I have to accept it fully and embrace it and take radical responsibility for it. Nobody did this to me. Or if they did, it doesn't matter. I'm not a kid anymore. I'm 48. I can't keep harping on something that happened to me when I was 10 years old. I'm never going to move forward, but instead take radical responsibility, see it, integrate it, heal it, and it unlocks. And I'll have this level up moment to where suddenly my income tiers up, right? As it hits another tier, right? And so people say, oh, well, what about all these poor people in the third world? Well, one of the things people need to understand that's very confusing with a lot of this is that this is a classroom that's mixed. Like imagine a classroom where you have postdoctoral people right alongside kindergarten. That's the earth, but it's for the soul. And different souls have different lessons that they need to learn in this incarnation. And there's a lot of people who are born in the third world to where they're a newer soul and they're trying to work on the lower three chakras, survival, reproduction, some sense of self-will, right? And they're not gonna, in this incarnation, although we are at the moment of a pivot and a change, this could change, but say someone who was born in 1960s and they died by the year 2000, they were born in sub-Saharan Africa, just as an example, that soul incarnated to learn about the lower three chakras, right? If you're watching this and you're somewhere in the first world, right, the developed world, you can make money. Oh, yeah, it's so hard and the deck is so stacked. Absolutely, the deck is horribly stacked. The Lucy's and the Molly's both. And in fact, one of the greatest tricks the Malakians ever pulled was getting good people to believe that money was bad. Money is the root of all evil. You hear people say all the time. That's not the quote, though. It's the love of money is the root of all evil. That is a totally different flavor to it. Because it's saying that when you love money more than you love your family or yourself, that's the root of all evil. Because what that's really saying is the love of power is the root of all evil. Not the exercising of power, right? Not the having of money, but the attempt to accumulate it. Why do you need to accumulate money? For resources to enact various different things. What are you doing with that money? I'm building children's hospitals. Okay, that sounds good. You're a good person. I'm building wells in sub-Saharan Africa. I'm clearing river blindness. I'm, helping teach farmers new integrated methods so they can do organic farming, right? And I'm spending a lot of my money to do it. I'm building schools in the inner city, right? Is any of that evil? No. Is any of that free? No. All of that takes money. So clearly money itself is not bad. It's just energy. But they've convinced people, especially Christians, that the pursuit of money is bad always, when it's not true. It's about how do you pursue the money? Or is it evil what you're doing to get the money? And then more importantly, how do you spend the money? Right? Because that's where the rubber really hits the road. Do you spend the money to oppress your fellow people? Do you use it to uplift your fellow people? So different people are here to experience different things. But if you're in the first world, you can make decent money. I promise you, you can. It's going to take hard work. It's going to take introspection. It's going to require you to move outside of your comfort zone. It's going to require you to determine what are my God-given talents? How do I develop those and how do I monetize those? All of that takes work. And yeah, some of it takes luck. But the key is that self-worth piece. Truly, truly, truly it is. You have to do all the rest, but to really start bringing and attracting in the abundance, it's about healing that self-worth, that specific self-worth that comes up around money. Again, you can be a 6'3" dude who's a UFC champion, gets unlimited ladies, but money just slips through homeboy's fingers. How? It's because he has a self-worth thing specifically about money that's off. Some amount of people have karma to where they're not meant to experience any kind of wealth whatsoever, and it is possible. But if that's the case and you're just endlessly blocked, well, then what you need to do then is come to peace with that. And if you're like, I can't come to peace with that, that probably means you can make money. Oh, but Ian, it's so hard. No, those are all excuses. That's all victim consciousness. And you have to step out of that. Oh, this thing happened with my child. Oh, this thing happened at my work, whatever. Yes, bad things happen, but you know what? They happen less and less the more you move out of victim consciousness. Because the universe, A, will reinforce what you believe, and B, the universe wants to bludgeon you with bad events until you eventually go, what the fuck is happening? I've got to do something different. And the universe is like, yeah, all you have to do is step out of the victim consciousness and you'll stop being victimized so often. And the universe will test you. Hey, did you actually learn how to do multiplication? Because here's a multiplication problem again. It'll come up periodically, but it comes up less and less and less the more you do this healing. You really create your own reality to an enormous degree far beyond what your mind probably accepts. And if you implement these three things, if you overcome the trauma and heal the trauma, that's the hardest one by far, and it's also the thing that's most worth it. You step out of victim consciousness, right? You're a survivor, and then you move into, I have a high self-worth. Your life will dramatically and magically change. I promise you, it's true. Try it. Try all the stuff I say. Try it. Don't just listen to it. Don't think about it. That's worthless. Do it. See if it works. And I assure you, if you do what I said and you do it correctly, it'll work. And when it works, your life will change in dramatic ways. And you can overcome all this. If you're listening to this right now, if you got this far in the video, you 100% can heal this, you can overcome this, and you can step into your power and step into your destiny. And we all need to be doing this. We have a responsibility to be doing this. Love you all. Take care and have a beautiful, blessed night or day, whatever the time is where you are. Take care. Be well. All right, so this is a little proscript to that video. If you're interested on working, especially on the victim consciousness and taking radical responsibility for your life, and also working on self-worth in relation to abundance, and just learning how to, through invocation, integrate aspects of your shadow self, integrate the dark feminine, dark masculine traits that almost all of us have in the modern world, where we've been socially engineered into one of those two groups. And in order to develop your divine masculine or divine feminine, the angelic magic classes that I teach, and the next one is May 16th. And that'll last for 7 consecutive Thursdays, and it'll be an hour to 90 minutes. And in that, you're going to learn tools to work with the angels in order to start to have that internal transformation to where you can take that radical responsibility for your life. And as you work with the angels, you'll find that as you do magic and ask for certain things, whatever is blocking you internally, whatever self-limiting belief that you have, will begin to dissolve with the help of the angels. It'll come up into your consciousness, and then you'll be able to address it and resolve it. And then you can have shifts in your life that bring in more synchronicities, more abundance, more love, more harmony. That's the big one, is that angelic magic leads to more harmony in your life, and just greater success in being able to access all the special and unique gifts that make you, you. And so, especially around victim consciousness and self-worth, the angels can be profoundly powerful. Trauma is something that kind of needs to be dealt with on its own, but it is something to where the angels can help give you the tools to heal that as well. So if you're interested, the links are below to join the angelic magic class. It's on the whitelotusoflight.com consultations page. Scroll to the bottom, and then you'll be able to sign up for that class. Also, if you're interested in getting guidance in your life about unfolding karmas, on in just 10 days, on April 30th, I will be shutting down all but my very high-end astrology packages, simply because it's so challenging and difficult, and I work so hard in it, and I have just a very high standard of excellence that at this point it only makes sense for me from a energetic point of view to work for people who really want to go deep, people who maybe are CEOs that want more advice, people who want advice on businesses, when to close a deal, when to try and get a contract signed, when to do business reviews, or people who just want to know really the depths of their being and how their karmas are going to unfold. Putting in that amount of energy and effort is very draining. And so I've decided that I'm going to close that aspect of my business on April 30th for anyone except for people who want to go really, really deep on it, get that astrological concierge package, an ongoing retainer, something like that. And so I will still have the deep dive natal and Navamsa charts up, and then the various executive packages, but I'm not going to do any more of the regular analysis, or even the singular deep dives for either natal or Navamsa. And Navamsa is the post-40 chart, and natal is the pre-40 chart, and the two of them come together to really show all the karmas that have unfolded throughout your life. And the natal still carries over to some degree post-40, but understanding your Navamsa chart can help you to unlock its power and help you step into it more and away from maybe some of those painful lessons you need to integrate from the natal chart. And so I will still be offering the deep dive double chart, but that's it other than the very high level packages. And so if you're interested in getting a reading from me, there's 10 days left. And so thank you so much and have a beautiful day. All right, bye-bye.